Welcome, everybody. This is Kathy with Wool Maven, and today's podcast we're going to talk about how I got started into hand spinning wool. And isn't it funny? Everybody has kind of a different reason. Some people are really into the spinning, other people maybe start out with knitters or crocheters, a lot of weavers, and want a specific yarn and then kind of work backwards. I have to admit, I did the other way around. I was more into the spinning and then found a way to use it. But anyway, we'll get into that. So here's how it went for me. When I was about 19 or 20, I saw a gal my age spinning with a traditional style spinning wheel. And that was the first time I'd seen someone my age spin wool. And I don't know why it took that particular instance for me to see that someone my age could do it at the time. And this was like 25 years ago. But for something about that, it took that, seeing that gal who was a peer of mine spinning, for me to go, oh my gosh, people my age could do this. Which, if I would have thought about it, was obvious, but apparently I didn't think about it. So anyway, that was the first time it finally clicked that, hey, that's a neat thing. I'd like to do that. And then I kind of kept it in the back of my mind, rolling around. And a few years later, a couple kids, stay-at-home mom, which is wonderful. I mean, we had the farm work, but anyway, so in my spare time, which that's somewhat of a laugh, but we'll get there. Anyway, I thought, hey, something really cool that I could do is if I got a spinning wheel, I could learn to spin, and we have a few sheep, so I could just use the wool that we have. So anyway, I got a wheel from a lady who was local and known very well for being into spinning for ages. Actually, she had a flock of merinos. And honestly, I don't remember what fiber she gave me to start. I'm sure she gave me something. And then I did, and with like a quickie, just give it your best go kind of starter lesson. And then I took the wheel home and was, doing my best by myself, which starting out was kind of ugly. What I was doing was using our wool, which was raw wool at the time, just from normal, everyday commercial sheep. So that meant that the washing, the processing, all that was all on me. But I'm still in the mindset of wool is wool. How hard is this? I've got this. I can do this. If other people have got it, it's not that complicated. But I have to admit, and it's not complicated, but I was oversimplifying it. I was like half-heartedly preparing the wool because I didn't realize that, at least at the time, I definitely realize it now, that a little bit, or depending on what you're working with, maybe a lot bit, but at least a little bit more prep on the front end of things makes your spinning experience just change so much. It is so much easier to work with well-prepared wool. But that is a lesson that took me like 15 or 20 years of trial and error to finally hammer it in. So anyway, that was where I started out with. As I mentioned, I wasn't overly particular on the fiber prep. So I just sort of did whatever looked good. And then I did get some hand cards. So I figured when I couldn't spin super well off the locks, I figured, well, that's my real problem here, is I need a little bit of fiber prep. So I got some hand cards, and that did help a ton. And actually, I still have those cards today. This was like 20 years ago I got those things. So that helped some. But what my real issue was that I didn't know the difference between basically how to work the wheel I had. And all of my answers, which made sense to me in my mind, unfortunately weren't something that actually helped me spin easier. And a lot of times they actually made it worse. So what I did was like set the wheel to it was an adjustable drive band, like one of the stretchy ones. So I set it to the biggest whirl. But the trouble is that also makes it pull in the hardest. But at the time I didn't know that. all I knew was bigger equals slower. So I put it on bigger and slower, which is good, except my problem was it was pulling in too hard. So I actually made it worse. So as I mentioned, the wheels are pulling like crazy, but that's because of how I set it up. Anyway, my initial experiences spinning were not great and definitely not successful. I had a lot of the wheel would just, zip my fiber just right up in there, right up in there, right up in there. And actually, when I got a super scary, really over twisted yarn to hold together, that was a big moment. That was a huge step forward for me. And now I look back at it and realize what I was proud of was actually, honestly, back to really scary. It was. It was pretty crunchy. Definitely over twisted happened a while ago and I kept on twisting because I was so used to it zipping right up on the wheel without me. But anyway, so I went through that a lot and I finally started to get that straightened out. And I just realized now, looking back, how much of a, not really the wrong fiber, but it was a combination of the fiber, the wheel, the settings, the fiber prep, all of that working together to basically work against me. So I was kind of setting myself up for disaster and then frustrated. And then I would get so frustrated that I would quit spinning and put it aside for a couple months, sometimes even maybe a year or two, and then get it back out and try again. And eventually I got to where I learned to work a few things out and I could make a fairly decent yarn of what I was hoping for. I still tended to over twist quite a bit. And then, oh gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, okay, let's be honest here. I have been one of those people who, there's the people who stand in line for the newest, greatest phone. I am the polar opposite of one of those folks. I was one of those people that kind of had to be like drug kicking and screaming to the internet, I just like, no, I'm not doing it. And what I didn't realize at the time was how much I was holding myself back from potential opportunities there. But regarding back to spinning here, the point to this story is that once I figured out all of the available, like there's all sorts of stuff on YouTube, there's a few podcasts, there's all these catalogs that you can look at. You can order fiber that's prepared for you. Holy Toledo. Right. And then once I started doing that, I was blown away. I was like, how awesome is this? This stuff is so wonderful. And it's not that the stuff I had was bad. It's that I didn't know how to take my homemade rovings or whatever I was doing at the time and make them put together in a way that made it workable for me to spin. And now that I'm better, I could handle now what I was doing then, but I didn't have the skills then, so it's not that it was impossible. It's that it was impossible for me at the time with the combo of what I was doing and my total lack of skills and total lack of knowledge of how to fix or adjust what was going on. Because now I look back, I really wasn't that far off, but wow, it felt like it. So anyway, but I kept going and I did learn to knit because, well, gosh, I had all this yarn sitting around and it was still heavy. It was still over twisted, but I knit up a few things that were heavy. I still knit. Now I can do better since I'm making better yarn. I do a little bit of crochet. I put together a peg loom I had a ton of yarn that I had spun, and wow, a peg loom can really use the yarn, and it's easy to use. You can kind of do a few patterns in there. The patterns aren't too crazy, but you can do obviously stripes, big blocks of color, and I even put in like some triangles coming in from the sides, but so it kind of looked like tiger striped. But anyway, so I do those things, but my main thing is spinning. Oh, then I do need to mention, I did get a new wheel. I've had it for like 8 months now. I got a matchless, which is a much more versatile wheel than the wheel I had before. And that has taken my spinning up more than a notch, like 10 notches. And it's not, the wheel's wonderful. The wheel's wonderful. But to be blunt, I am the same person I was a week before I got the matchless as I am 2 weeks after I got the matchless. And in that 2 weeks to a month or so of, messing around with the new wheel, my spinning went up just tons. I was so much more capable of a spinner. So I had it before. I just didn't have it matched right with what I was trying to do in the wheel that I had. So I really feel for anybody who's looking at the beautiful yarns that everybody else is making, and you see videos on YouTube, maybe a few on Facebook, and you're going, wow, look at that. They just make it look so easy. Or look at that really cool core spin. Or look at all those locks they put in there. How on earth did they do that? Every time I try something like that, it's a total mess. I feel for you. From what I've been able to tell, that's just, you're a little bit misaligned, and with a little bit of understanding of the kind of the little bit of mess up you're having, once you tweak that, gosh, you'll be able to do it too. So the difference between you and the yarn you want to spin and the spinner you want to become, honestly, it really isn't that far. It just takes some dedication on your part, some daily practice, and knowledge of how the wheel and the fibers are actually working, like what they are doing. And honestly, when I got started, I had zipperoo on that. I was like, wool is wool, right? It's sheep. All sheep have the same wool. I'll just grab something. And, anybody who knows how to spin is practically falling off their chair laughing at that, because wool is definitely not just wool. And the wool from different sheep is very, very different. But now that I know, that's about how I got started. So I just mostly like to mess around. We have a good time. I got a drum carder, another huge step up in fiber prep, because I like to blend the colors. You know how it goes. But anyway, that is how I got started. So what I do is I spin a lot of R fiber. I like to order a few things and kind of blend them in, just kind of messing around. I like to try different techniques. Maybe I'll see something and say, hey, I could give that a go. But the big thing that I've been working on now is with this new wheel, it has the ability to be set up so that I can do more woolen spinning. And before this, I was a diehard worsted because that's what I could do. And that's what I had held together. So that's what we did. But now I'm working more in the woolen. I'm working more going over the prep for my fleeces, like on the front end there, and put in the extra time before I get to spinning, because gosh, it makes a world of difference. But anyway, that's what I've got going on. And that's it for today's podcast. If you want to connect with me more, I have a website, woolmaven.com, YouTube channel with the same name under Wool Maven. And I also have a Facebook group, which actually that's probably the easiest one. And the Facebook group is kind of a generic name, but it's Handspinning Yarn with a Spinning Wheel. And that is my Facebook group. If you want to join, I would love to have you. Show me what you're doing. Ask me some questions. Let me know what's shaking for you or what I could help you with. Until next time, have a wonderful day and see you later.